What is up, producers? Welcome to Low End Candy. I am Behemoth, and today I'm going to explain to you how to actually use an equalizer. What do I mean by this? I know a lot of people know you can low pass, you can high pass, you can cut out bells, you can dip frequencies, boost frequencies, you can do all that. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about being able to identify different frequencies and different ranges and knowing how to treat them. This is something that I didn't learn until I was at Icon Collective. I knew what sounded good and what didn't. I knew when to high pass, I knew when to low pass. I knew when to cut frequencies and do all that. But knowing how to identify these frequencies and where they live is really going to help you. So let's get into it. Before I hopped in, I wanted to mention that I'm currently doing one-on-one mentorship lessons on abletonliveteacher.com. If you're tired of sifting through YouTube tutorials all day and it taking you 10 times longer to learn what you're looking for than it should, go to abletonliveteacher.com. Trust me, it'll help you advance way quicker in your production. I promise you. I've had 4 or 5 mentors and it's helped me tremendously. Also, at this point, I'm doing new videos practically daily, so toss me a like and subscribe. It helps a lot. Thank you guys. So let's hop into it and take a look at this track I recently released, kind of a wild, crazy bass track called West Coast Money. Go stream it. We're going to use this as an example to learn where some frequencies are and how to address them. So if we take a look at this Pro Cue here, any track that we put in is going to look generally like this. Doesn't matter if it's smooth jazz, it doesn't matter if it's dubstep, it does not matter if it's rock. Whatever it is, you can pretty much rely that there's going to be a shape like this. This is a screenshot from the track I was just showing. And basically what's going to happen is always our loudest point is going to be our sub bass, obviously. And the reason for that is because of what's known as the pink noise curve. Basically what that means is your sound, the loudest point is going to be the lowest frequency, the loudest lowest frequency, and then it's going to kind of go down from there in what's known as the pink noise curve. Basically, our ears are more sensitive to the higher frequencies. So any track you put in, it's going to look like this, and what's going to look like is it's going to go up, it's going to have a dip here, it's going to peak somewhere in here, and this is going to depend on what your track is, what key your track's in, and what note the 808 or the sub is currently hitting at. Right here, it's telling us this is C sharp. So it's going to curve up, and then it's going to slowly curve down. There's usually a little bit of a dip right here. These curves are going to vary right here, but it's going to have this general shape of slowly slanting down, and then a cut at about 16. So knowing that, like I was saying, if ever you are not sure if your track is sounding right or if it's sitting right on an EQ, just compare it to this picture or compare it to any reference track that you pull in, because like I was saying, no matter what the genre, it's generally going to look like this. So coming back to our project here, now we're going to talk about how to address each of these frequencies. Anything below 20 hertz is not really audible. I used to think that this is where like the lowest and the subbiest bass was. That's not true. Anything below 20 hertz, and we can prove it right here, is not audible, not even with an amazing sub. I'm sure you can't hear anything. I can't hear anything either. I have a sub here. Basically, what it equates to is like rumble and noise if it's in mass quantities and it's loud, and it's not a sound we want. Whenever I'm mixing a track or mastering, I typically, to some extent, high pass right here, because we don't need that, especially if it's building up. Now coming into our frequencies over here, which would be starting at 40 and going up to about 100 to 200. That's going to be our sub frequencies. So listening to these here. That's where your sub frequencies are going to dominate. Another thing I'll mention is the rest of the track, except the sub bass, we typically want to go ahead and high pass from this point on. You don't want anything else crowding up your low and your sub. In every other frequency spectrum or frequency range in here, we're going to have frequencies overlapping and frequencies sitting in the same spot sometimes. We don't want that with our sub bass. We want our sub bass clean, and that's the only element we want here. Where exactly this cuts off is up to you and up to your style, up to your genre. But typically, I will put it at around 100. The exception to this rule is if you have a kick with some lower frequencies. I would say the kick, I would generally always cut no less than 50. So we have our nothing area right here. We have our sub bass area right here with a little bit of kick introducing in the 100 to 200 range, maybe lower, maybe higher. And again, this all depends on sounds, but this is a good general overview of what you're looking for. Now coming over here into the 200 to 250 range, this is where thud's gonna live. So this is where like boxiness lives. So I always tell my students, anytime you're producing a track, typically you get a buildup here, and that buildup is boxiness, which we want to reduce. So I almost always reduce this in all of my tracks. This is kind of what that sounds like. So it doesn't really sound good. It sounds boxy, and when there's a lot of this in a track, you can hear it. And it really crowds the track, because what you want to do is you want to drive a little bit of separation between your sub bass and the rest of your elements. So muddiness and boxiness, right around 250, I would say 200 to 500. Always check for this to see if it's building up. Coming into the 500 to 1K range, this is where a lot of your body of your tracks live. So this is like your low but mid frequencies. A lot of stuff lives here, a lot of stuff overlaps here. This is a frequency range that I don't typically have to address. It's usually pretty fine the way it is. Moving over here into the 1 to 5K range, this is where you start to get a little bit of harshness. There's a lot of body here, a lot of mids, a lot of vocals, your snare. But if this area isn't controlled, then you can start to get some harshness. Now 5 to 7K right here is really where harshness lives. This, if you have like a piercing sound and your track is just sounding harsh and it's not easy on the ears, this is the range where you're gonna address that. This is actually the range, starting in the range of where a de-esser compresses. So a de-esser is a tool that removes like the harsh sibilants from vocals. You can also use it on your percussive instruments. But this range, what it does is it compresses this range. This range is where that area starts. You can actually use a de-esser on your percussive instruments, also your master, and kind of address this. But this is another area where I find myself doing some dynamic EQing. Now coming up, anything above 7, this is going to be what's referred to as air. So for a long time, I thought like the louder you went, the more harsh everything got. That's not necessarily true. So the harshness typically, like we just talked about, lives between 5 and 7K. It can live between 3 and 5K. Going up, this is really just air. So it's kind of like a white noise kind of sound. Boosting the air is a great way to add excitement and add kind of liveliness to your track. So this whole range right here, this is like your very tops, of your percussive instruments, your very tops of everything. And this is typically an area that I end up boosting instead of cutting. Now coming to way over here, we're talking 16K plus all the way up to however high this goes, 300 or 30,000. This is, again, really inaudible if we high pass this. Again, I can't hear anything, and I have good speakers here, so this area and down here to 20, we can pretty much just chop those off. With the 16 and up, I'll do a brick wall, and with the 20, I'll usually do like a kind of gradual curve, and I'll kind of shimmy this to match up with the sub. So I hope this helped you guys in kind of learning about your different frequencies and how to interpret them. I know after learning all this stuff, it helped me a lot, learning how to address issues. So if you're listening to a track and you say, hey, this sounds a little boxier, this is a little harsh, hopefully now you know which frequencies to go to address the problem. Thank you guys for coming through, and I'll see you next time.
Mark.